Looking up has always been something I have enjoyed doing. I enjoy stargazing. I did it as a child when you couldn't see very much sky in the city. I loved it especially when we'd stay at the ocean a little bit too late, and it would start to get dark, and there you'd have a whole lot bigger expanse of sky, and you'd see so many more stars. And as I got older and did some hiking and climbing, and the opportunity to stargaze was just something that was very entrancing to me. And to be perfectly honest, I can close my eyes and stargaze to my heart's desire, because I can see the constellations and I see the traveling of the heavenly bodies, and I'm amazed at what God has done in order to allow us humans to be able to position ourselves in time and space. And God has really put a lot in place so that we can go to those uncharted places. And so it was those people very long time ago, those wise men, those magi, had been charting the skies and following and watching and seeing this prediction of this new star rising, and recognize this to be the heralding of a new birth of a new baby. And so they were plotting, and they were preparing, and they were going to head in this new direction. And there was so much that they knew, and so much that they could plan for, and so much that they didn't know, because when they went off, they just had a star that they were going to follow, and they really didn't know the final destination, and they didn't know the land exactly where it was going to be, and they didn't know how they would be received, and they certainly didn't know who that new king would be, and that impact that new king would have on all the people for the rest of time. But what they had was this hunger and this desire to recognize the realization of this revelation, because something was being made known to them in the reading of these stars, and they wanted to go and to confirm what they were seeing, reading, learning in the heavens. Matthew also wanted to do some good teaching about what they were seeing, reading, learning in the heavens. Because when the Gospel of the writer of Matthew was speaking to the people about the Magi, he had something much different on his heart to convey. When the Magi were going, they were going to find this newborn infant, and they were going to explore this opportunity to travel and to see if what they thought was going to happen was going to transpire, and who this new person might be. But what the gospel writer wanted the people of Israel to do was open up their minds in that same way, to explore this new possibility. Because what the people of Israel had wanted for a long, long time was the Messiah to come. They had been hoping, they had been searching, they had been seeking, they had been longing. They had this deep, deep desire for God to do this next new thing that God had promised. Scriptures over and over, all the prophets had said he was coming. Isaiah said he was coming. But they wanted it to happen, and they wanted it to happen more than anything. But what they wanted it to happen was for the people of Israel. They wanted the people of Israel to be saved from their enemies, and they wanted the people of Israel to be secured by their God, to be cared for by their God, and everything to be okay for them. And what was starting to happen in the early church is this opportunity, this expansion of thought, this epiphany of God making God self-known, the unknown God making God self-known to all people. That God did not come, the Messiah was not just coming for the people of Israel, for a small select group of people, that God was coming for all the people everywhere. And Matthew was saying, look, open up your eyes. Open yourself to the horizons that the wise men were opening themselves to. They weren't looking just in this one small little slot. They were looking up to the heavens, and they were searching the heavens for where this event was going to happen. And this is what you are to be opening yourselves to the fullness of what God is going to do across the world for all the people everywhere. Matthew was saying, he's not here just for us. Jesus just didn't die on the cross for us. And the people of Israel were having a really, really hard time hearing that, because even the people that he was writing to, because of course he was writing this after Jesus had died, even the people that he was writing to didn't really want to hear it. Because some of those people were the people that had been persecuting them, and some of those people were the people that had been literally hurting them and starving them and being mean to them. And really all they had wanted was just to be saved by the Messiah that God had promised. Just have David come back on that big old horse and just kind of clobber some people and take care of us, and everything's going to be good again. And Matthew is saying, look at what the Magi did. The Magi traveled at great personal risk. There they were, they say, 3 guys. We don't know, 3 guys. Bringing 3 gifts. That's what we know, where the number 3 comes. But 3 gifts came of great wealth. Gold and frankincense and myrrh. There's great symbolism, something worthy of a king, something worthy of a foretelling of what was going to happen in Jesus' life. But they're bringing something of great purpose and great intent, and they're bringing it to this special little one. And of course, they weren't really coming shortly after he was born. They were coming sometime later, and they had traveled great distance at great personal risk, and they were willing to do anything to see that this prophecy was being fulfilled. And Matthew's saying, look what they were willing to do. Foreigners, aliens, coming to worship. And look, Jesus welcomed them, and Mary and Joseph welcomed them into their home. And they bowed down and they worshiped him. And they just didn't give him a little. They opened their treasure chest and offered him what they had. It's easy to look at the wise men and say, how incredible, how brave that they would take such great risk. How learned, how magnificent, how astute. The people of Israel had lived under such tyranny, and let's be understanding of the persecution that they had endured. And yes, of course, God is a God for all people. And then we look at that God who is the God for all people, and what that God who is the God for all people is calling us in 2018 to do. Because the God who is a God for all people is the God who is a God for all people, calling us to risk. They are not the only ones who were asked to come to this epiphany moment. They are not the only ones who are being invited to recognize the unknown God being made known to us. Because the unknown God being made known to us is the God who wants us to see God for who God truly is, a God who created all people everywhere, made the earth fully abundant for all people everywhere to come to know and worship and adore him. And despite the obstacles that it would incur for all people to come together, we're going to do some headbanging in order for us to get along, but despite all those obstacles, God is saying, these are the people that I have created, and these are the people that I have called your brothers and sisters, and these are the people that I want you to invite into my home, and these are the people that I want you to worship alongside of, because these are the people that I have formed to be my people. So like those people long ago that Matthew was writing to and saying, these were the people who came to worship our God. We are the people who are called to take a risk. We're the people who are challenged to look for God everywhere, even in the last place that we expect to find God, even in that place that we don't necessarily want to find God, because that might be exactly the place where God will place us in our next mission field. Maybe the next thing that God wants us to do is exactly the place where we don't want to go, and we were hoping we were never going to have to go to that territory. And maybe that territory really isn't even outside of our home. What if we start asking God those risky questions about our personal lives? What if we do that thing like we ask God to get into the middle of our marriages and to start being that person that we go to when we start having issues with our communication? What if we start inviting our family to really make God the number one priority in our family? What if we take a deep look in the beginning of 2018, we're just like 7 days in, and we say, this is the year that I truly and completely will commit myself to be a follower of Jesus Christ. What will it take to risk saying that to Jesus Christ? Because what that means is you've got a new king in town. And every time you have a new king come into town, you're going to have to change some things. Some things are going to be different. Some things aren't going to be exactly the way they are. And just like those wise men, when those wise men heard from the angel, you can't go back the same way, because if you go back to Herod, he's going to go and he's going to take the baby. Things are going to go wrong. They didn't have like 6 months, a year to study the stars and see if there's another way to go. They just had to find another way back. Sometimes we have to do the next risky thing and find another way right then and there, because God has asked us to do the next thing. What are you willing to risk to be a faithful follower of Jesus Christ, to commit your life to Christ? What are you willing to risk to put Christ as a priority in your family? How will you commit to turning your life in the direction that you know it needs to go? Your challenge for this week is to look for God everywhere, even in the last place you expect to find Him. May all the glory and courage be yours. Amen.